Welcome back to the Creativ Rise podcast. We've got a special guest episode today with someone who's near and dear to our hearts. This is Peter Vanderwall. Peter Vanderwall, you might actually recognize his name because he was on an episode 79, I think it was, when we were doing live coaching sessions and we were putting them on our podcast. Peter reached out to us, asked if he could be live coached, and so we brought him on. And we actually talked about a whole bunch of stuff about him on whether or not he should choose weddings or if he should choose brand and if he can do both. And it's actually such an interesting story because he has completely pivoted from, he was going to focus on weddings. Now he's in the brand space and he's completely shifted. He's gone through the mastermind. He went to the inner circle retreat. He's now crushing $20K a month in his marketing agency called Social Club Studios. Peter is an awesome guy. He's so smart. You're going to learn a ton from this podcast. We can't wait for you to meet Peter. But first, we want to talk about what's coming up?
Yeah, so guys, we're getting close to getting into the summer here, and at the end of the summer is round 10 of the Creativ Rise Mastermind, which is just crazy to say that it's round 10. This will push us over probably about 270, 275 graduates when this round is done.
Yeah.
In the last 4 years of running our signature 6-week Creativ Rise Mastermind, where we teach you all of the pillars to give you the greatest foundation to help you grow a 6-figure business as a creative. And that's why Creativ Rise exists, is because we believe you should get to do what you love and actually succeed at it. And getting to be able to make 6 figures doing what you love is kind of the entryway ticket to getting to enjoy all the pleasures of succeeding at doing what you love, which is cool. So that is the heartbeat of Creativ Rise. We care so much about that we drop as much free knowledge as we can every single week on this podcast. But if you want more, if you're going, hey, I would love for Joey and Christy to work on my business with me, for a ton of other people that are going to be in the community with me going through the 6-week mastermind to help me as well. If you're looking for something like that with a ton of community accountability and guidance, some coaching, giving you all the frameworks we've used to grow our businesses and grow tons of other people's businesses to 6 figures over the last couple of years, then the Creativ Rise Mastermind is for you. We only run it twice a year. This is the 10th time we run it. It is application only, and the reason why it's application only is because so many people apply for it. We had 80-something applications for it last time. We only take about 30 to 35 spots every time. So you got to apply the second the application comes out. Now, the easiest way to do that is by jumping on the wait list prior to the application coming out, and all you got to do to get on the wait list now is go to creativrise.com or click on the link in the description, and you'll get all the info about the mastermind, get all the dates on when the waitlist goes live. What's the date again?
September 10th is when the mastermind starts. Waitlist applications go live August 23rd.
Yeah, so mark those down on your calendar. Cannot wait for you to hear this episode. This is going to be a phenomenal episode. I hope you learn a ton about this. This is a little bit of a funny episode. It's like a sequel to a funny conversation we had with Peter over a year ago, episode 79. You should go back and listen to that one too if you have never heard it. And then make sure you listen to this episode because you're going to get a ton of value. So here is our conversation with our good friend, Creativ Rise Mastermind grad, round 8, and Inner Circle retreat member as well. It came to the Inner Circle retreat, Peter Vanderwall. Here we go. Peter Vanderwall, welcome back to the show. When I say welcome back, I do mean welcome back because you were on episode 79. So it's been quite a little bit since you were last on the podcast. Some stuff has happened in your life. Man, so glad you're on the show today. Thanks for jumping on.
Thank you guys. It's always a blast being on here with you. Always good chatting with Joey and Christy and hanging out. So I'm excited.
Let's go, man. Well, hey, you know how we start the show. You listen to a ton of the podcasts. You've been on the podcast before. Rapid fire, first question, very simple. Where are you from?
I am from Crown Point, Indiana. I used to say Chicago because nobody knows where Crown Point is, but now I don't care that nobody understands like where in the world I'm at. So that's okay.
You just own it.
I like love
it.
that.
Yeah,
That's also, Chicago feels very different than that.
Yeah, well, and it's not a great look identifying with the city of Chicago these days. So
Gotcha. I was born there, so I'll take offense, but that's all right. All of our Chicago people are like, boo.
Okay.
But I love it. Okay, so what is your business? Rapid fire.
Yeah, so my business is a marketing agency. It's transformed quite a bit, but today that's really the best term to describe it.
Awesome.
I love it.
Cool.
And it is called what?
Social Club Studios.
Beautiful. Social Club Studios. And then how long have you been in business for? Like start to where you are now. Why don't you give us a, like, I've been an entrepreneur for this long, and then give us a, how long have you been doing your specific Social Club Studios?
Yeah. So I like made my first money in my business in like February of 2021. And I actually went full time like relatively quickly. I remember it was actually around this time of year. I think it was Memorial Day weekend. I was hanging out with my buddies, and one of my buddies convinced me I needed to quit my job because I was already making I was working like one of those part-time college jobs, right? So I was already making like 3-4 times the amount just second shooting for other wedding photographers and wedding videographers like on the weekends. Mm-hmm. And so like I was only in this job just out of fear, right? So quit my job, coming up on now the 2-year anniversary of going full-time in my business. Epic. And it's been amazing.
Epic, dude. 2-year anniversary. Okay. And then classic question, what's been a flop? An absolute flop that you've had in your business? We've all had one. Humanize yourself for a second. What's been a flop you've had
Whether
in your
it's business? Like I tried the software, didn't work, or I dropped my camera in a fountain at a wedding, or XYZ. What is a flop?
Okay. So 2 come to mind. Number 1 is just a little funny one. I was shooting a wedding, and we had the whole bridal party walking down this road with like very little traffic on the road. So we just had them walking down the road. It was a cool walking shot. I'm walking backwards like maybe 10, 15 feet in front of them. And apparently this car like saw us coming and just like stopped. And I just like walked into the hood of the car backwards and I like sprawled out on the hood. So it looked like I'd gotten hit, but the car was completely stationary.
You could have sued.
Also, how rude. No one warned you from the bridal party.
I know. Nobody said anything either, which is what I really took offense at.
So how did you roll out of that one? Like, how did that situation end?
So this was like post ceremony. Like we had been on the party bus for about half an hour to get to that location. So they had all had a couple of drinks. And to be honest, I'm not sure anybody remembered it within like 10 minutes afterwards.
Okay. Gotcha.
Oh, I would have loved to see that shot of you though, falling. Like if you were recording at the same time. You
the live footage.
That would be great. That'd be great. Wait, you got a second flop. What's your second flop?
So the second flop, I think, is the real flop and the one where I like actually like took a lesson from it, right? And that was if you go back to basically about the time we were talking last year, I really thought that weddings were going to continue to be a large part of my business for the foreseeable future. I still to this day, like I'm wrapping up my last few weddings ever this year. And like, I go to these weddings, I shoot them. I enjoy the process. It's fun. But at the end of the day, it doesn't support the lifestyle I want to live. And so I put all of this time and effort and a bit of money into building the weddings brand into something that looks like a luxury wedding film house. And I was focused on it for probably 2 or 3 months. So not only the cost of the actual time and effort and money that I put into it, but the opportunity cost of what if I had put that into my agency at the time.
Yeah.
That set me like, not to say that set me way far behind and I'm not where I should be today, but you know, lesson learned, like focus on the right things.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I love it. You had a physical flop and a mental business flop.
Strategic
literal flop onto a hood of a car.
Yes. A literal flop. Okay. Yes. So Peter, I love what you just said. You just said about a year ago, which is not a long time, like 12 months, guys, like 365 days. Like this is not a long time ago. We met you for the first time. We did a thing on the Creativ Rise podcast where we said, you know what, we want to get some people from the community on the show. Why don't we put it out there that we're going to be doing these free 2-on-1 like coaching kind of back and forth sessions, and we'll record them live and put them on the podcast. Peter reached out. A bunch of people reached out. We picked Peter, and we met you on the podcast. And I loved that episode. You guys can go back and listen to that episode. It's episode 79. We talked about a bunch of stuff. The main question you had, Peter, was, can I build a wedding business and build an agency at the same time? And if not, what should I do? Like, which one should I pick? And I remember us talking about that on the show, and you were so adamant about sticking in weddings. Now, what I'm about to say and what Peter's probably going to say, none of this is a bash on wedding at all.
No, absolutely
Wedding
not.
Businesses are a phenomenal business model. They're simple. They have structure to them that can scale quickly. They're a phenomenal business model. Some people just don't think that it's basically exactly word for word for what Peter just said. It's not the model that supports the lifestyle they want. That's a decision that you've now made. And at the time, you were shooting about 50 associate weddings a year. Like you were shooting a ton of weddings.
Crazy.
And you're shooting up 50 weddings a year, and you said about 48 of them were associate weddings. So you were going, man, I really want to grow this wedding business. Like I'm really good at shooting weddings. I'm just going to get more of my own. And then you said, but I also have this little like client on the side, on the kind of like an agency model, and it's making me this much money. And my jaw dropped. I was like, wait a second, why are you focusing on weddings? You should just double down a little bit of that energy because you have so much leverage in the commercial space based on what you were doing. Again, not a thrash on weddings at all.
No, it's the opportunity you had.
Peter's specific situation. Last year when we had him on the podcast was he had two things going on. He was trying to figure out which one to pick. Fast forward, Peter, why don't you give everybody, before we get into like how you made that decision, give everybody a quick update on Social Club Studios. Where are you at per month? And then describe what your core offer is that's building up that monthly recurring revenue.
Yeah, so the agency has gone under a lot of transformation since we originally spoke and originally met. So back then, it was basically I was creating social media content and producing a podcast for this one client I had with a pretty decent size retainer. I think at the time it was maybe like $5,000 a month, which, that's a full-time income right there.
100%.
So fast forward to today, and I've now got 5 clients in this agency. My top line is about $20,000 a month right now. And it's a 3-tiered offer. So we still do social media content and podcast production. That's still like our bread and butter. And that's kind of our like intro offer. And then once we get into that, tier number 2 is course creation. So helping you take your knowledge and like productize it into a sellable online course or a coaching program. And then tier number 3 is like building out a whole, like much more robust marketing funnel for that. So going beyond just organic content and incorporating ads, incorporating email campaigns and lead magnets, just arranging those in the most productive way for your particular product and your audience.
Yeah, that's awesome. The growth you've had over the last year is insane. Like, I hope everyone's listening to this going so inspired about what you've done. Talk about who you're selling this to. Like, who are your ideal clients? Who are your current, you don't have to say who they are, but what are the type of people that you are serving?
This is my favorite part about what you do, to be honest.
Same.
Because it's so different than what most people do.
Yeah. So my target audience, my client avatar, let's say, is coaches and consultants in the real estate space. I do work with a handful of coaches and consultants outside of the real estate space, but like that's not my focus. That's not who I'm marketing towards. And the reason I picked that niche, the first client I ever worked with on this sort of content creation basis, he's a real estate tax consultant. And so my first thought was, okay, I should niche into real estate. And so for a little while, about like 4 months ago, I was like, I need to target realtors. What I realized is like, there's a ton of realtors out there, but like the percentage of realtors that are really crushing it, there's a lot of realtors that are crushing it, but like the percentage of them that are doing that is really low.
Very low.
And so, and not to mention the success that we've had with this original client's business was more because he was a coach and a consultant than it was because he's in real estate. So I realized the real estate kind of category is really I really just picked that because like now I know a ton about real estate. And so I'm much more fluent in speaking the client's language in that way. Yeah. It's not because I can't produce results in other industries.
Yeah, I love
Absolutely.
it. So you are focused on service-based professionals who have a high-ticket service that you're then going to them and saying, hey, let me blow you up online so more people know about you, more people want to work with you. And for all the people that can afford your high-ticket service, let me help you take your knowledge and create a cheaper entry-level product that people can consume that is going to teach them how to do whatever you do, which is like the real estate tax consulting stuff. And so it's a brilliant model. I love that you're working with service-based professionals because a lot of the time service-based professionals have a lot more money and there's a lot of them, right? Dentists, accountants, lawyers, personal injury lawyers, like so business lawyers, attorneys, all that stuff. So much stuff that you can really target them in a lot of different spaces. And you're just getting into that because you've gone deeper into this one niche and there's so much more opportunity there. So I love that. So exciting. $20,000 a month. You just hit that this month. That's your new record, which is epic.
Yeah, like 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations on
So
that.
cool.
Thank you.
Talk to me about what does it feel like to hit $20,000 a month in your business in a recurring model? Like that's incredible. Talk to me about what that feels like.
Yeah, it feels insane. The more I think about it, because, I know people who are running agencies who are doing 50, 100K a month, people I've done coaching calls with or just, follow online. And so when I'm kind of in that part of my brain, like the strictly business part, I'm like, I'm still small fry, man. But then I take a step back and I look at like how far I've come in the past year. And I'm like, I'm not a person who's really at risk of like just like resting on my laurels and being okay with where I'm at. And so I think it is healthy to like take a step back and really appreciate like, man, like all of this hard work is paying off.
Absolutely.
And it's a beautiful thing to see. And I owe it all to the people around me, I mean, like in large part to you guys for your like guidance and coaching and cheerleading and all the stuff that y'all do. And then just, I don't know. I think I don't know. I lost it.
Yeah. No, it's so good. So talk to me about that. Like Peter, we spoke to originally, who was like, I want to do weddings. I don't want to do this agency thing.
Peter.
Like wedding Peter versus Peter now, who's the CEO of Social Club Studios, and you're building out a team. You're building out SOPs. You're building structure. You're building funnels. You're building client acquisition system. Like the difference between that Peter versus this Peter is pretty night and day. What would you say, knowing what you know now? You've been through the Creativ Rise Mastermind. You were in round 7. Was it round 7?
I think 8.
Or round 8?
I think 8, yeah.
Round 8. So you were in round 8. You've then been a part of the Creativ Rise Inner Circle. You were at the last retreat we hosted. So you've been in and around Creativ Rise stuff. You've consumed everything. You've really let it nurture your brain and your approach to business. Knowing everything you know now, what would you tell Peter if you were having that conversation we had with Peter, wedding Peter, a year ago? What would you say to him? Like, honestly, it's so interesting. I would love to know.
Yeah. I think the first thing I would say is, and this is the biggest lesson I've learned over the past 6 to 12 months, is the power of focus. Like having one thing that you're 100% dedicated on. Because you can do weddings and brands simultaneously, and you can make 6 figures at it. But is that where you want to be? Is that where you want to cap yourself? You can't systemize something so broad to be able to scale it to high levels. And so you need to pick the business model that you're going to stick with. And so, to your point earlier, Joey, like there's nothing wrong with weddings. Weddings is a great business.
Yep.
But you can't, like, you got to pick, man.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing I would have told myself. The second thing is focusing on the highest leverage activities available to you. And so, for me, over the past 6 to 12 months, that's looked like building a team of editors. That's looked like bringing in an administrative assistant to help with the stuff that like I don't personally need to be doing in my business. I'm now looking at hiring a copywriter. I'm building out an entire like employee handbook and SOPs. And so I'm really like building myself out of the business as much as possible, or at least out of the day to day, so that I can focus on creating new things, creating the next thing, and just like innovation. Cause that's where I've kind of come to see is like my zone of genius specifically.
Yeah, I love that. So give us like, what are your zone of geniuses? Like, what do you feel like you focus on day to day to grow the business? Because I think a lot of people can get stuck in like the minutia of the day to day administrative stuff, and they feel like, I'm not actually like acquiring new sales. Like, what do you do to be able to acquire more clients, keep growing, rather than just capping yourself by getting bogged down with the workload that you're pitching?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd say like the areas that I like, if I was to build my dream business where I'm only doing the things that I feel like I'm best at and I love the most, is I'm creating content. Like, I don't think that's something that will ever go away for me because I just enjoy the process. I enjoy talking about ideas that I find interesting. And then the other thing would be something along the lines of like communicating big ideas in a way that people can understand them. I listened to a ton of podcasts. I was actually like top 1% of podcast listeners on Spotify in 2021. And so just like I take in all of this information, right? And then in conversations in my day to day, even just for my own dumb brain, I have to like take this information and make something useful out of it. And so that's what I really enjoy. And so that can be on an educational level. That could be on a, I'm doing this for clients level. I'm taking Ryan's tax consulting expertise and helping him communicate that to a more generalized audience.
Yeah.
It can come in a lot of shapes and forms, but if I'm kind of like boiling down the scale, that's kind of how I would describe it.
I love that, man. So $20K a month, that is a very, very different operational style of running a business than running whatever you used to be running when you were trying to do both, or even at the beginning when you did just pick to focus on Social Club Studios. So talk to me about like, if you were, again, speaking to yourself, who we got to speak to pre-mastermind, before you went through our mastermind, before you went through the inner circle stuff, pre-mastermind, if you had to give yourself a little bit of directional, encouragement, like, hey, start with this. Let's say pick someone, you're doing 500 to $2,000 a month in your agency, and someone wants to be doing 10 to 20K a month like you're doing right now. What would you say are the foundational things? Like, hey, focus on this. These could be the first 2, 3, 4 things you focus on. You're going to get closer to that 10 to 20K a month. What would that be for you?
That's a great question. So my opinion is, like, if you're building a content agency, you can do pretty much everything except the video editing yourself up till about 10K a month. That was my experience, at least. And so, yeah, first thing you need to get off your plate is video editing. Frankly, you're probably not that good at it compared to somebody you can get for much cheaper, either on Fiverr or,
Yes.
I use a job board that's, for American companies hiring remote workers from the Philippines. So I hire full-time employees now from the Philippines for video editing.
Yeah.
And that's super effective once you reach that scale where you've got enough work to keep a full-time person busy. But, for those early stages, Fiverr's great. I used Fiverr for a long time. The next thing I would do is I'd think about not just getting more clients for the same thing, but like, what can I do to increase the value of each individual client?
Yeah.
So, for example, something I did was right off the bat, I started offering social media management as an add-on. And I only have one client right now who's not working with us for social media management. We're like, it's only one client where we're just editing the videos and then sending them off in a Google Drive folder. And so that's A, it's a great like value add for your clients, and B, it's it's a great way to like separate you from, because there's a million content agencies out there that are just basically arbitraging editors.
Yeah.
And so it's a great way to like set yourself apart and offer a more holistic, like full service approach.
Yeah, totally. I love how you said that. The lingo that you've heard us use that you're familiar with. We talk about this in the mastermind. We talked about this a ton at the inner circle retreat you were at, was closing the problem circle, right? So it's like, if you as an agency are trying to help somebody solve a problem, but that problem you just solved creates a new problem, odds are you're not gonna be able to charge a ton of money for that if you're constantly creating new problems. But if you're like, hey, not only do we edit the video, or we give you content ideas, we help you film it, then we edit it, now there's another problem. Well, who's going to post it, right? You're helping them close that problem gap. And anytime you close a problem gap in any industry, there's a lot of money sitting there, right? So talk to us about, what's your average ticket price? I know you said you got 5 clients. So that would break down, if it was all even, that would break down to about $4,000 a month per client. But I know that's not how it is. Like, what's your average like ticket price? And then break down what that actual offer looks like. Like, what are some of the deliverables there, just so that people have got some context into what you're actually doing and how you're looking to continue to grow that business with that model.
Yeah, totally. So, my average is a little skewed because I have one like super, super high ticket client. And then I have a number of what I would consider like mid ticket clients. So my super, super high ticket client right now is worth about $100,000 a year to me in my business. His price is, I think, $8,500 a month, his package. He's the original client I started working with when I first started the providing this type of service. And then since then, I've got a number of clients around like that 3,500 mark, that 3,000 to 3,500. I've got one guy at like 2,500, and then that client that I mentioned that doesn't even do social media management, they're like 1,600. So cool. It's like quite a wide range. But the services we're providing for those is some combination of short form content creation, either remote or in person for clients that are like in our local area. And then social media management on top of that. That's the first thing I always like push them to do, because I know they're not going to do a good job of like keeping consistent on Instagram and stuff like that. And then number 3 is podcasts. So not all of our clients do a podcast, but it's something I highly encourage them to do, because whenever you're creating short form, you're creating attention, you're getting eyeballs on your brand, you got to have somewhere to send them. And usually people aren't ready to like actually pay you money to buy something. And so a great intermediary then is the podcast, right? You post short form clips either from the podcast or promoting the podcast. People go listen to the podcast. People are used to sponsorship, like ad reads on the podcast. And so you do an ad read for your own product, your coaching program or your course. And then that's just a great way to have like your very, very basic marketing funnel, like right off the bat.
Yeah, I love that. Super cool, man. Such a cool offer. It's so scalable. I love that you said you got people at different tiers. So, the deliverables are obviously scaled down or up to match that tier.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really cool. How do you go about managing the team? So you've talked about you hire people overseas. You've got, administrative assistant. You've got someone working with you in kind of like a COO role right now that's helping you build out a lot of procedural stuff in your business, which is genius. Yeah. You're in a season of business where you're actually focusing less on client acquisition because you've hit 20K a month in recurring, and now you're focusing more on like operational stuff, which is a brilliant move because you obviously know, and you're learning this, every time you go through that growth ladder and you grow, you hit chaos. You've got to reorganize stuff, restructure stuff in order to hit the next season of growth, right? So you're doing a great job of that. How do you manage all of that? Like for someone who's going, wow, I really think that I would love to have a couple people, or even if it's just one or two people working for me, what tips does Peter have after building a $20,000 a month recurring revenue business model with people you are hiring to help you execute it? What tips do you have for finding those people, training them well, and making sure that they are moving the business forward?
Yeah, definitely. So, moment of transparency here, like team and systems and operations right now at this moment are actually like pretty messy.
Totally.
And so like you talked about, I'm working with a COO, a fractionalized COO, who's kind of helping me build out those systems and processes. And actually, just even in my calls with her, she's been bringing up things like, "Oh, I'm sure you're doing this," and I'm like, "Definitely not doing that."
I love when that happens.
Really not doing that. Yeah.
So I'm like adding that. I've got like a checklist of things that I need to do, and so I'm just like quietly adding that to my checklist on the side. But yeah, right now the way we manage team, and it's functional, it's just not optimal, right? So I have a Discord server. We're moving over to Slack for a few different reasons, but I've got a Discord server with the team, which is completely free. A few different channels for our different roles, video editors, administrative, social media, stuff like that. And so that's where we kind of keep up in the day to day. If they got questions, if I got questions for them, that's how we keep up. I've got a content database that basically keeps on top of project management and every individual piece of content that we're creating, all in a software called ClickUp. There's a lot of different softwares you could use for that, but I found ClickUp, I think like last December or something. Spent most of the month like building out a really robust system with templates and just keeping everything super organized. And of all the systems I have in my business right now, like that is the one that has held up the best over this period of rapid growth over the past few months. So I think those are the biggest two things right now. Obviously, there's some other stuff we're exploring. I'm using Kajabi, which is like a really popular course creation software, to create a course that is solely for internal purposes. So there will be like a kind of a welcome course for any brand new employee, and then there will be courses on the way we do things specifically for video editing, social media management, and just having all of our SOPs in one place, both in video and text form.
Amazing.
Awesome.
What I hear you saying is you've got to get, as the founder, as the guy operating the business, as the lead, you've got to get everything out of your head and actually into a procedural like format so that you can actually hand it off to people. And I think that's probably the biggest mistake you maybe made in the beginning. I know I make that mistake constantly. You make that mistake. Anytime we're growing anything, it's so easy just to think that like, oh, if I can just tell somebody how to do it, they'll know how to do it. And it's like, no, dump it out of your head as the leader, get it into a format. Like you just said, you're literally building courses for internal use only for your company. Brilliant, right? So I love that. That's such a great piece of advice. Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome, man.
That's really great. Okay, Peter, we so appreciate all the knowledge you've been dumping all this entire episode. It's been so good. I think it's going to give so many people like ideas for their business on how to move forward, 100%. How to grow, all that kind of stuff.
Just encouraging too.
And just encouragement, which is so cool. You've encouraged literally so many people in our community. I think from that like initial podcast and then from then on, like you jumped in on the mastermind, you've been in the inner circle. Like talk about a couple of the highlights that you experienced during like the mastermind or the inner circle and maybe some of the things that like stick out for you of what helped you grow. Like what in that system and that environment kind of helped you grow with your business and helped you move forward.
Yeah, totally. So I want to backtrack a little bit because there was one mentor I had like when I was very first like starting to make money in my business, and something, I was always asking him, comes like, I don't want it to just be a relationship where I'm taking from you, right? Like how do I give back to you? He's a dude making like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. He's got a multiple $1 million net worth. Like, what can I, as a 19-year-old kid, even give to him that would be of any value? And something he said to me that's really stuck with me was, just do it for the next guy.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he wanted to see. He wanted to see that like cascading effect. And so that's like always been super important to me as I've been part of different communities, including and especially Creativ Rise, is just like, what value can I give to the people around me? And so I'm thinking in those terms with you guys, with the people in my mastermind, my friends at Inner Circle. I'd say the biggest example that comes to mind is my man, Dan. Like, so a little background on that story. Dan like randomly DM'd me on Instagram a few months ago. I never met the guy, never heard of him, but he was just like, hey bro, I was wondering if I could get some advice from you. Like, I'm just starting my creative business. And I actually, I told him like, hey man, I don't really mentor creatives. Here's my friend Joey's Instagram. Go check out his program.
Well, that's so funny, because what did he say?
Well, he was like, oh, yeah, Joey told me to talk to you. And I was like, oh.
This is so funny because Dan comes to me, and Dan's one of my really good friends. And he's like, hey, man, like, I've got all these questions about this. So I'm giving him all this feedback and stuff. And I was like, hey, here's a great example of somebody we've helped build a business that's doing similar things to what you do. Go check out Peter, And then that's so funny. I love it.
Appreciate the referral, Peter.
Yeah.
I was trying to get those referral bucks,
There you go. There you go.
But no, so he and I hopped on a Zoom call. We had like an hour conversation, just like really hit it off. And then out of the blue, I get a text from him. He's like, hey, when do you fly into Palm Springs? This was like the week before, or actually like 2 days before our Inner Circle retreat this spring. And I'm like, and so I sent him the time and I was like, what, are you coming too? And he's like, yeah, I fly in like an hour later. And I was like, oh, sick, dude. We'll like get lunch and stuff. And so we hung out the afternoon, just like waiting for the actual start time, and all week spent time together, and now we're boys. But that all came because like y'all sent him my way, and he was bold enough to like ask for the help he needed.
Yeah.
And then we just started having conversations about his situation and like trying to see what from my situation applies to him, because I'm not big on like telling people what they should do, because their situation's different from mine, but what lessons can you pull from it, right? And so that's just like a really cool friendship that came out of originally what was more of like a almost like a mentor-mentee kind of situation.
Yeah, so
for sure.
It's so funny how all that stuff works, because the situation with Dan too, from our perspective, was Dan's been a really good friend of mine for years. I've constantly been encouraging him, like, dude, start your creative business, start it. You're going to crush it. And he's been like, yeah, and he finally goes, I want to do it. So we were running the Inner Circle retreat. Peter was one of the people coming to that retreat, a very intimate, small retreat of Creativ Rise Mastermind grads that got invited down to Palm Springs to focus on some really cool things for a couple days. And we needed like an extra hand around the retreat. And I thought of Dan. I was like, oh, we should totally invite Dan, because he'll get to come, he'll get to help out, he'll be so good at that, but he'll also get to learn and connect with people, which is going to be epic. So funny how just small the world is when everything connects like that. But dude, you've been done such a great job of that. So talk to me more about the mastermind. Like, what was helpful? Because you went through the mastermind, I don't know, it's got to be coming up on a year. Like, it's got to be close. Maybe this fall.
It was last fall.
So last fall to now, what did you come into the mastermind doing per month? Was it like $5,000?
I think I was just 6 figures, but like hustling for it.
Yeah. So like maybe like $6,000 to $8,000 a month. So you've doubled your revenue, which is incredible. What's something from the mastermind that you were like, oh, that really, really helped me get to where I am today?
So I think the biggest thing in the mastermind and all my conversations with you guys since is a word that keeps coming up is frameworks, right? And the reason that you guys' knowledge is valuable to so many people is because you've built frameworks around it, whereby people can actually apply that knowledge to their own businesses, right? Yeah. And so like having those frameworks, like a lot of the things we talked about, honestly, were things that like I already knew in my head, but like I didn't know how to apply it to my business.
100%. Yeah.
And at the time I was applying it to completely the wrong business. But then, afterwards I like kind of went back and like went through everything, all my notes and all the materials and the videos and whatnot, and kind of like almost like retook the 6-week mastermind.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I can point to one specific piece of knowledge from the mastermind, but just like having those frameworks of this knowledge in a really like incredibly applicable form was just so incredibly valuable.
Awesome.
I love that.
That's awesome.
And then what about the inner circle? Because you are, we haven't interviewed anyone that's been to the inner circle since we did that inner circle retreat. 4 days, Palm Springs. We had a ton of fun. We had some awesome sessions. What was a piece of value you got from that you would love to share? Like, hey, this is helping me in my business, and you'd love to share it with everybody on the podcast.
Yeah. So I think two things. Number one was just like being in person with the Creativ Rise community. Like, I mean, invite only, like very intimate group. All of these people are just crushing it in their businesses. And to be honest, like the people I hang out with are not like crazy entrepreneurs generally.
Yep.
The people I hang out with are like people I grew up with, friends from, my hometown, people from my family. And like, it's a totally different world than this world of entrepreneurship in a lot of ways. And so you get to feeling like a little bit lonely. You feel like a big fish in a small pond. And so that was just completely flipped for me at the inner circle. And like, I knew going in, like, this is one of the benefits I'm going to get out of this. And I was just so excited for that. Like, I love the feeling of being a small fish in a big pond. Because I love I just love seeing growth and seeing potential, ahead of me. And awesome. So that was a huge part of the value I got from it. The other thing I think, to be like very, very specific, was our workshop on funnels.
So
we
fun.
spent like, what was it, like 2 or 3 hours one morning? Just
straight.
Yeah. Just Joey was just like breaking down marketing funnels for us in a way like, guys, my degree. So I was in college for 2 years, and I was studying entrepreneurship and marketing. And in those 2 years of college, I think I took 4 marketing classes. I never heard anything like the 3 hours where Joey like just laid out funnels for us in such an easy way. And I literally provide marketing services for clients, and I didn't have this figured out. So now knowing that, I'm like, well, now that's a whole nother level of value I can bring to my clients. And it's a whole nother way I can get new clients for myself.
Yeah, dude. 100%.
That's so cool.
I love that you say that.
Because it makes you feel good.
It makes me feel so good. But it reinforces the point you just talked about earlier, where you said Creativ Rise is just helpful and valuable. All the masterminds we run, the inner circle content that you went through, is because we framework things. Like, that is something that when we started Creativ Rise, I said Creativ Rise will be different. I do not want to be a couple people screaming on the internet that we can help you grow something, and then we just share what we did and we hope it maybe works for you. I'm like, no. Let's actually get this down to a science. Let's framework the heck out of this so that other people can do this. I had a conversation with a friend the other day who's a phenomenal leader, massive communicator. He's a brilliant dude, very, very respected. And getting to watch him over the last few months, because I've watched him coach some people around me, and he is one of the best coaches I've ever met in my life. He is so good at coaching. And I asked him the other day, I said, man, you are just so good at helping people jump through glass ceilings, like just level up in whatever area, whatever arena you're helping them level up in. What's the trick? And he said, I don't teach people. And I was like, what? He's like, I'm not a teacher, I'm a coach. He said, coaches work off, hey, here's a framework. Let's see how this framework applies to you so you can be the best version of yourself and excel through it. Where a teacher goes, here's what I know, copy me. And 90% of the time it doesn't work, right? So I'm so glad you said that. And you're like, hey, Joey broke down funnels for 3 hours. And when Peter says that, all he's saying is, I broke down marketing in the most simple yet scalable form in a framework, and it clicked for you, right? It clicked for everybody in the room. So I so appreciate hearing that, because that's always my goal at Creativ Rise. Christy knows this. I literally lose sleep over this stuff, going, man, how do I make this framework better so that it's more applicable to people like you, Peter, and then it can help you grow your business. So, dude, so cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
Peter, thank you so much for sharing so much awesome wisdom on this podcast. Are you open to people just giving you a quick DM if they've got a quick question or something like that? I want people to be able to go and like follow you, support what you're doing, see what you're doing. So where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah. I'm like really, really slow on DMs, but I promise I will get back to you eventually.
Great.
If you say you're from Creativ Rise, if you're trying to sell me your video editing services, don't bother.
Straight to
So
block.
lead with, I heard you on the Creativ Rise podcast. Boom, there you go.
And I want to edit your video.
Yeah, exactly. So my Instagram handle is @PeterVNDR. You can go check me out there. That's where I'm most active. I do post on pretty much every platform out there, but I don't really I kind of just post and ghost. So Instagram is where you'll actually get me.
Great.
Cool. I
Awesome.
love it, man. And then last question,
Yes,
the signature
signature.
show question. You know it. You've heard it before. Why is this all worth it? Why is it worth it for someone to actually take a stab, take an at-bat at breaking the creative struggle in their own lives? The same way you've gone from having no idea what you're doing to doing $20K a month now in your business, the lifestyle you're living in is completely different. Why should someone really take the chance on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think let's be real. Like anybody who's pretty good as a photographer or a videographer can make six figures, but they're going to be working really, really hard for it if they don't understand the business behind it.
100%.
And that's what you guys there was a guy who was asking me about your program, and he was like, "Oh, do they help on video stuff and the technical stuff and the creative stuff?" And I'm like, "No, it's not about that. It's about business." Because you can go learn the creative stuff elsewhere. You can learn how to be a really good photographer on YouTube. But it's that business stuff. They don't teach this even in business school, where you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for so-called education, right?
Yeah.
So look, if you're content making a little under six figures and working really, really hard for it, then sure, that's fine. But if you want to break past that, then you need to find mentorship somewhere. And if you find it through Joey and Christy, make sure to use my affiliate link.
Oh my gosh.
There it is. There's his pitch. Well, Peter, man, thanks so much for being on the show. It's so great to have a catch up with you. We catch up personally all the time, but a catch up with you publicly on the podcast, because it hasn't actually been that long, but it feels like you have totally become a different person. You've definitely got a different model, a business model, since the last time we spoke on the podcast. So thanks so much for being here and giving everybody so much value today, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, Peter.
This is a blast. Thank y'all.
Thanks, dude. Well, what a fun conversation with Peter. I love just going back and forth. I mean, he's funny.
I love that guy.
He's got value. So fun to get to have him on the podcast as a returning guest. First time was he was getting coached. The second time he was getting to coach you guys as you listened, because he has so rapidly grown his business. And he said it. One of the biggest reasons why his business has grown to what it is from the Creativ Rise Mastermind, which is so exciting. He's been to the Inner Circle retreat as well. And the Mastermind's coming up.
Yeah. So if you want to get on the waitlist, all you have to do, again, we said go to creativrise.com. You can join the waitlist. There's a ton of buttons there. If you go to the website, scroll down twice, and you can actually see a ton of videos from past members that have been a part of the Creativ Rise Mastermind, past graduates, and their stories of what they've hit. It's super interesting. Again, we love these stories because they just show that breaking the creative struggle is real, that you can do it, and that it isn't as hard as people make it seem like it is. So go watch those testimonials. You'll sure to be inspired. And you guys, we love you lots. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.